minds and in good health. As we're about to deliberate on the nation's business, I pray that you grant us wisdom, understanding, and patience. Those who have not yet joined us, I pray that you will hasten their steps. These are the mercies we ask and thank you for. Through your Son's name, amen.
Thank you very much. Are there any apologies for absence? Are there any apologies for absence? Okay. Let me welcome us on this blessed day to another meeting of our HR Human Resource and Social Development Committee meeting. We thank the Lord that He has spared our lives, and we are here to make good for the people of Jamaica. I would take it that you would have already read the minutes. And if so, are there any correction to the minutes? If we don't have any correction to the minutes, may I now ask that the minutes be confirmed? Moved by Member Crawford, seconded by Member Vaz. Matters arising from the minutes? Matters arising from the minutes? Matter for discussion, the continuation of a discussion on a child diversion program with a presentation from the Ministry of National Security on Children and Juvenile Correctional Center. At this time, we'll ask that the technocrats be invited in.
Chair, is this a hybrid meeting as well? Are we, so members have joined us?
Yes.
Okay.
So good morning to you all, members from the Ministry of Security. At this time, we'll ask that you introduce yourselves to the committee.
Sorry, Madam, Mr. Chair, when they introduce themselves, could they also include their positions?
The member is asking that as soon as you have introduced yourselves, you introduce yourselves along with the position that you hold. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Retired Gary Rowe. I'm presently the Commissioner of Corrections. Yes.
Good morning, Ella Garty from the Ministry of National Security, Policy Director.
Good morning. I'm Claudette Hamilton, Director of Juvenile Services with the Department of Correctional Services.
Good morning. I'm Karen Elliott Taylor, Superintendent, Metcalfe Street Secure Juvenile Center.
Thank you very much. So we would have asked that the ministry comes to us today and to make a presentation on the question that we had asked. And so at this time...
Chairman, before you proceed to invite the Lieutenant Colonel, isn't it the norm that ministries are represented with the permanent secretary in attendance? And if not, if in the absence, isn't there a excuse or something sent to the committee as to the non-attendance of the accounting officer, for that particular ministry?
Just repeat the question.
I'm saying, isn't it the norm that when ministries are, whether departments and agencies, but the unit is usually represented by the permanent secretary, and in the absence of the permanent secretary, a letter indicating some apology and who would be the head of delegation here to represent the ministry is sent? I'm asking if such was sent to the clerk.
Since I've been here, the practice is that each time that a ministry or a department of a ministry comes to speak to us, a permanent secretary is always present. I do not know, and I stand corrected, I am here to learn just the same, if it is so that they can be absent from a sitting of a committee whilst their ministry is present here to give a presentation. And so I'll seek guidance from the clerk to bring us up to speed on that and what is the course of action from there. So, member, the clerk would have written to the ministry, the permanent secretary to be exact, Mr. Courtney Williams, and she would have stated exactly what would have asked. And in the paragraph, it says, you and other appropriate representative from the ministry and the Department of Correctional Services are invited to the committee's meeting scheduled for November 9th at 10 a.m. to discuss, and we list the number of things that we would want to be discussed. And so the letter would have come back to her just indicating who the persons and their position that they would be presented to make that presentation. And it stands, it is here, but the permanent secretary is not, and so I will now ask again, what is our course of action? Do we continue or do we send a letter?
Well, I would suggest, Chairman, that we continue, but just to send a letter to the permanent secretary indicating in the strongest measure that as the accounting officer for that particular ministry, that he ought to be present here. And if not, then his lieutenant, pardon the pun, Colonel, his lieutenant, that is whoever is below him in the ministry, comes with the appropriate excuse as to why the permanent secretary is not here. But it is not expected that an agency on its own ought to be before the committee, because the letter was written to. And by virtue of how the committee operates, the permanent secretary is the accounting officer and hence ought to be here.
Members, the member Guy would have made a concern in that he would want us to continue with the meeting as was scheduled, but to parallelly to write to the permanent secretary in the Ministry of National Security to express our disgust at the situation or concern at the situation, and for him to respond to us as to why he was not here in person to represent the ministry as the accountable officer. So the instruction will go, Madam Clerk. On that note, Lieutenant Giro, Sir, you can go ahead and make your presentation.
So thank you, Sir Chair. I would also like to thank the committee for inviting us to be part of this deliberation. Certainly the Department of Correctional Services believes in the importance of the subject matter experts being given an opportunity to share. This morning, as was mentioned earlier, a correspondence came requesting the participation of the departments to speak to specific clarifications required. And we broke them down into the 4 questions as itemized on the correspondence from the committee. Question 1, if I may go straight into that, speaks to the capacity of our juvenile correctional centers island-wide. That submission was made earlier. I believe you may have it available to be shown. But without further ado, our South Camp Juvenile Rehabilitation Center, our South Camp Juvenile Correctional Center is where we house our female children of a capacity of 144. At the time of the report, we had 53 wards recorded. Then we have our Rio Cobre Juvenile Correctional Center, which is divided into 2 sections. We have the general set of boys who are there, but we also have a high security dorm as well. And where we have it divided, the general population is 100, where we presently house 36, the capacity 100, where we house 36, and for the high security dorm, we have a capacity of 32, where we house 17. Metcalf Street is our remand facility, where the male juveniles come in and they're processed, where we have a capacity of 192. Presently, we house 69. So that was really question 1 and 2 rolled up into 1. We thought it best to encapsulate both the capacity and the number of children housed in one right there. Question 3 sought to clarify and discuss the safety of children at the juvenile correctional centers. Now, not being aware of the discussions leading to this question, we certainly took it as an opportunity also to highlight how we treat with the safety of the children who are in our care. And before I invite my Director of Juvenile Services, Ms. Hamilton, to expand, I would like to also set the tone in that safety here, as we speak to our children, is not just physical security that we'd like to emphasize. We look at the psychological space as well, how the children feel within our institutions. I think the safety begins there. I believe that the focus is always to ensure that the children feel safe in the space so that they can participate in the other initiatives and programs as they continue their journey with us. So in terms of that psychological aspect, how they relate to our case officers, how they relate to staff, how our staff relate to them, I believe it begins right there from inception, and that sets the tone how they continue their journey with us. But I will invite my Director of Juvenile Services, Ms. Hamilton, to expand on some of the other safety features and approaches that we use in treating with our children. Ms. Hamilton?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members.
Good morning.
To continue, as it relates to the safety of the children from the admission, they are separated in terms of age and offenses, and those that are uncontrollable. They are supervised by officers in every engagement that they participate in within the facility. The dormitory setting is, for the girls, we have individual cell areas where maximum 2 persons will live in a particular area. We have firefighting equipment that are in place. All institutions are fitted with electronic...
Ms. Hamilton, could I crave your indulgence through your chair to ask to repeat what you said about the living areas in terms of the numbers?
Okay. The institutions are different in terms of their structural makeup. At the South Camp Juvenile, the setting is dormitory with individual cells. So that makes for safety in terms of a cell with a capacity of 12, and we might have 7 in there if there's a child who needs security or to be safer, then that child can occupy an individual space. We do fire drills quarterly across the juvenile institutions. There are fire escapes on all of the dormitories. There is a suicide prevention monitoring room that was put in place at the Recidivism Juvenile Correctional Center for boys. And this is to facilitate children with psychological issues. And they are recommended by the doctor, the psychologist, or the psychiatrist, and they are manned on a 24-hour basis. I also mentioned the electronic alarm system that was implemented and functional. We ensure that all institutions were fitted and the fire hydrants were working. The children are constantly given the opportunity to do their drills so that they may be able to respond quickly in case of an emergency. The officers, as Commissioner mentioned, were trained in psychological first aid, child rights, and wards management. And this is to ensure that they are aware of the rights of the child as it relates to the UN conventions and other regulations. We do not carry weapons, and therefore they are trained in control and restraint, which is a non-lethal approach to how we control them in case of any fights or other physical confrontations. All institutions are fitted with a medical unit, and it is manned by a medical orderly who is trained, and doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists are assigned to each institution on a weekly basis by the medical director.
Ms. Hamilton, I was waiting for that section of of the report for safety, because mental health is critical, especially for the at-risk children. So I am happy to see that that part is included, even though it came at the end, that you have counselors. Is it a schedule? Do you have scheduled counseling for these children at specific times throughout the week?
Yes, it is, member.
I'm happy to hear that, especially in the crisis that we are going through. Mental health is critical as them learning how to escape a fire. We need that, and I hope that based on the crisis that we are going through now, that you would have added additional counseling sessions for these children, and even for the ones who are not at risk, just to keep their mental health in check.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question to you, Ms. Hamilton. First of all, thank you for the clarity with which you have presented the information. We didn't ask this question, but I'm just curious to know, since we are speaking to the physical safety, the psychological needs, and the medical needs of the juveniles, are there any programs in place that caters to the educational or academic well-being of these juveniles?
Yes, we do. And just to inform that the juvenile institutions operate like a boarding school. So we have a schedule, an academic schedule from 9 to 3:30 daily, Mondays to Fridays. And that includes extracurricular activities as well. And we have the psychological, the psychiatric, we have chaplains that are assigned to the institutions. And so it is a multifaceted approach that we use for children who come into juvenile institutions. They do academics up to CSEC levels. So we have the children organized in different groupings from remedial to CSEC levels. And they do participate in the CSEC exams on a yearly basis.
Finally, you mentioned that the juveniles are separated by age and offenses. What's the youngest juvenile that you have?
The youngest is 12, and on their 18th birthday, they would be released.
Thank you.
One more question, Ms. Hamilton, because you have a critical role in our children's welfare. Is there a transition from these institutions? Is there, you mentioned education. Do we have a system where after a certain time they can transition out into the real world? Is
yes.
that a part of the whole plan, that you prepare them for the real world after being in these institutions?
Thank you, member, for that question. Yes, we do. We facilitate and assist parents to get their children into higher education. Currently, we have 2 children in college, and they're doing pretty well. And those who do not transition into academics, they go into vocational, because within the juvenile institutions, apart from the academics, we do vocational training, auto mechanic, we have IT, home economics, tailoring, and barbering. And so they are able to transition.
Thank you.
Member Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. And Ms. Hamilton, thank you for the responses. I went through them, and I am very happy to note that the numbers that I expected are not the actual numbers that have been reported, meaning that we have a kind of low rate of within the population in the juvenile centers. But coming from the numbers, I just wanted to find out the rate of recidivism among the juveniles. Do you find that we have a lot of repeat offenders coming? Or is it that when somebody comes in, then they're transitioned out and they've been reformed and we don't have to worry about them again?
Thank you for that question, Member Hamilton. No, there is not a high rate of recidivism, not among the correctional orders. Because remember that we have remandees as well in juvenile institutions, and those are the ones that will come in and they'll go to court and they'll get bail, or they'll be given a fit person order and they will go home to another family member. They are the ones who normally might return, but as it relates to those children coming out of the correctional facilities, we do not have that issue of them returning.
Thank you for that. This would mean, therefore, that the ones who are given your kind of intervention, then that the intervention actually works.
Yes, it does.
Okay, thanks.
Oh.
My question: has there ever been a time when a ward of the state would have been so rehabilitated and get themselves up to that level of education in their career? Have you ever have a time when one would have been employed to the system to help with the system, having a first-hand knowledge of what entails?
Thank you, Chair. Children would have excelled, but I think it's from their own perspective that they might not want to return. But we have never really had a situation where they would want to come back.
Madam Garty.
Good morning again, Chair. Well, through the ministry's summer program, as well as our internship program, we have had 2 interns who were in the juvenile institutions, and they are actually, one would have completed his studies at UTEC, and he was with us for approximately 1 year, and another young lady who is actually entering university, or she would have entered this year, and she was with us for over 1 year, and she was working with the Ministry of National Security.
The next question is mentorship program. Is there a mentorship program that is built into the curriculum?
Yes.
The Ministry of National Security has a fantastic mentorship program. Oh. Yes, it's on now. Yeah. The Ministry of National Security launched a mentorship program, the We Transform mentorship program in 2017. And so that's what we have now. We have engaged persons from the private sector, from academia, all over, within Ministry of National Security, other government ministries, agencies, to provide mentorship for some of these same wards. And we have now expanded to at-risk youths within schools that we, the ministry, is treating with.
Are there any other questions from the...
Might I?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, I yield to the member.
Thank you, Member. Ms. Hamilton, going through the statistics in relation to the offenses, what stood out to me was the fact that larceny has, over the years, had the highest numbers of juveniles committing offenses, the housebreaking, the simple larceny, etc. With information like this, so for example, the 2013 statistic shows 26 persons were found to have committed larceny. In 2014, 33. The numbers are like that. When you have information like this, what do you do with it?
Well, if I may, thank you for that question. Like any data, once you can compile it over a period of time and you create that picture, we do have partners who we from time to time sit down and have discussions on the best methodologies going forward. This helps to inform not only the more prevalent incidents out there, but it also reinforces to us as a department. We ask the question, why would these young men and women be involved in this type of act? Is it their need for certain possessions? Then our job then directs us to say, how do you coach and nurture these youngsters that this is not the way? You have to get qualified, you have to work hard, you have to develop certain skills. The data informs the action. We discuss with our partners, with our stakeholders, the best methodologies, the best lessons, the best courses that we need to share with these children in terms of not to go along the same path once you're looking at your future. What do we do with the data? That's always the good question. We look at our NGOs, we look at our overseas partners who offer certain facilities, certain skill sets, certain qualified lecturers and consultants. How can we improve how we do our business, interacting with the children, ensuring that they get an opportunity to see the rehabilitation options, the benefits of choosing the right path, the success stories that they can create for themselves, applying themselves academically or manually in terms of skills with your hands, trade sets that you can branch off into, as opposed to breaking in and that type of criminal behavior. So it's really to inform how we can remain relevant, and being able to scrutinize this data from time to time. We sit down as experts and we see how it can bring value to how we do our business. Thank you. I'm not sure if Ms. Hamilton.
Thank you for that, and it is very clear, but is the data used any at all from a preventative standpoint? Meaning, do you look to see the areas where these children are from, their located geography, to determine, okay, we're having a problem in this parish or this community, and then there is intervention there, or is it all on the back end?
Well, thank you. In terms of the department, we stay in our lane in that respect. So as it relates to our correctional facilities, how the data informs us. I think you're maybe more aligning to how could the data assist maybe the JCF or maybe other community-based organizations. We do have our probation aftercare offices in 16 offices across the island. We do have our conferences. Off the bat right now, I can't recall where we've utilized this data to inform their interaction in the communities. But the data, as it speaks to the probation aftercare officers, it helps to inform their interaction with the families, how to coach the parents as to these are the strengths and weaknesses of the children that we interact with, and how we can close the loop, so to speak. I'm not sure if that.
Yeah, it kind of does, but since we're having this discussion, I realize that there's value in data. And I would assume that we would agree that, data sharing can really help with our crime fighting methods. So I believe maybe it's something that can be looked at going forward, sharing this information with the JCF to see whether or not, we can have some preventative measures going forward and not always, trying to intervene when it is already too late. My suggestion.
Sorry, fair point. Thank you.
Member Guy.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Commissioner, Do you have a Hilltop Juvenile Correctional Facility? Do you have a Hilltop Juvenile Correction Facility?
Yes, sir, we do. We have a facility in the Bamboo area of St. Anne, Hilltop. That's where we would have housed our high security boys. What has happened recently, we consolidated that institution at Rio Cobre. And if you look at the numbers, as reported earlier, out of the numbers at Rio Cobre, the high security group, a capacity of 32, we have 17 housed there.
So you no longer have that facility?
We have the facility, sir, but right now it is under review in terms of the best utilization for the children.
What I mean is that there's no one there now, in terms of
no children there, no, sir. No,
Thank
sir.
you. Right. Ms. Hamilton, I looked at the report that you have presented and in terms of your narrative to the committee here, and you spoke about the training that is given to your officers as it relates to the international and UN convention. Am I correct?
Yes, you are, member.
Yes. But I have a concern here. And is that training very recent, or is that training that has existed for some time before?
It is ongoing training for every new batch of recruits, and that's where we start from the correctional officers. It is a part of the training program. It has been incorporated, along with in-service training that happens throughout all the institutions. Those who might not have had it at their recruit, we would have in-service training to allow for them to be sensitized.
All right. You are aware of an Indicom report, third quarterly 2020, July to September last year, that specifically investigated complaints coming out of the Rio Cobre Juvenile Correction Facility. And in that report, there were complaints that were made by wards of the state that they were hit with sticks by by correctional officers. Now, it was not just one who made that particular report, and I'm sure you're seized with the report as well. How does that now juxtapose against what you just reported to the committee now? Because in that particular convention, there is some restrictions.
If I may,
that type of behavior. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Sir Member. If I may, not to take Ms. Hamilton off the spot, but I think I should put here that the Department of Correctional Services, as you know, Sir Member, we are a uniformed paramilitary group. We have certain disciplines, we have certain standards and protocols that each member is expected to follow, each member of the uniformed group. The uniformed officers who provide security at all institutions, to include juvenile institutions, they are trained to manage their respective spaces. Will the situation arise that on occasion the uniformed officer may deviate from the proper protocols and procedures? That may happen. But the architecture that exists in terms of supervision, accountability, once it's discovered, the mechanisms to put in place to retrain, to realign the best practices, and maybe even the disciplinary action required, then those bits of machinery takes place. The report, as it was presented, from certainly a key partner in how we do our business, Indicom, the opportunity to review what was put in that report, the opportunity to do our own internal investigation based on the report, and coming up with our concerted measures in how to correct whatever may have been going wrong. We took that and grasped the initiative to correct that. We never endorse or encourage that type of action. When it does happen, we stamp it out as quickly as we can, and we encourage the wards, we encourage our children, we encourage other members of staff. If you see it happening, tell someone so that we can correct it. And that is how we've run our ship. We always look at the best practice, whether we get courses overseas, whether we get subject matter experts coming to Jamaica, whether we go on the internet and Google the UN website. The UNICEF partners we have here in Jamaica have always been with us and offer training to keep us aligned. And our supervisors have to just always be on top of the game, ensuring that all of us, from the seniors to the juniors, play by the regulations, the rules, and the standing orders expected, and what we all know should be the standard.
Thank you very much, Commander. Follow-up, Chairman. The initial part of your answer just now led me to think as to whether your paramilitary training organization is best suited for this type of juvenile correction facility. I still have my concerns about that, but I'm somewhat comforted by the latter part of your presentation, in that measures have been taken, and as you reassess, as you go along, you reassess what needs to be done. But having said that, and the report was late from last year, the whole incidence of jail block and draws order that existed at the Rio Cobre juvenile correction facility, does it still exist? Because there was some concern by the Indicom report that this was, one, inhumane treatment in some respects, and that two, in terms of how the wards are housed in that particular area of the facility, that it ran against, in their report, some of the Mandela principles, you know, and some of these are enshrined in the UN protocol, so I want to have a better word now. Can you say, therefore, that this exists, or if it does exist, what is the current status?
Thank you, Member. And, you know, I said it to my team earlier, it's always an opportunity coming in this forum and sharing, which we believe are certainly some positives of how we operate within the department. You know, behind the tall walls and the tall fences, a lot of times, certainly the general public is not aware of the improvements. Based on the Indicom report, which highlighted some underlying standards that need to have been improved, certainly the department had to reprioritize some of our spending. What I can personally attest to here, Member, is that the look of what that building was at the time of the report is totally renovated and modernized. What was an area that we would separate children who got into conflict among themselves and who may have chosen to harm one another, and what was then regarded as the jail block. The actual term of the location is J block, but over years, you know, the names kind of suits the rumors. The whole idea of what it now looks like, there is a separate addition that was built on with an observation portal where officers on duty can sit and constantly observe within the separation areas within that space. Each of the separation areas, if I'm not mistaken, houses 2 bunks, and each area has a built-in sanitary convenience where it didn't exist before. So once a child is believed that the timeout is required, the child is placed in there, proper bedding, proper sanitary convenience, and proper 24/7 monitoring by a correctional officer who sits down facing the space where the child has been placed. An emergency door has been set up, a proper alarm system in terms of in the event the place has to be evacuated, a proper logging system in terms of before a child is placed there. It goes through the due diligence. The supervisor briefs the commander. The commander then speaks to the superintendent, who is the one authorized to say, yes, the ward is to go there for a timeout until the situation has been calmed down or settled as to what the violent nature may have been. So the jail block no longer exists in the sense of a jail, but the separation space has been improved, where that has been regarded as a requirement that may be utilized on the authority of the superintendent from time to time.
So you are assuring us now, Commissioner, that we're in the come to do another visit to that particular facility, that all the report would negate what was reported in the quarter report of 2020, the July-September report of 2020.
Yes, member.
All right. Thank you very much.
Chair, one question following from the member's question and the responses. Outside of Indicom going to do their inspection or investigation for their reporting purposes, do you have regular inspections done, outside of that, to ensure that, everything is operating as it should? And how often are those inspections done? And one other question in relation to members here, are we allowed to do site visits, for example? I'm not sure who would answer that question. I don't want to pick on Ms. Hamilton just because I name association.
Say again, say the last. I didn't hear the last.
I was saying I'm not sure who is best suited to answer that question, and I don't want to pick on Ms. Hamilton just because of name association.
All right, fair point. One of the benefits of, as I said earlier, a paramilitary formation in terms of the correctional officers, it speaks to a hierarchy of command and control, where you have subordinate officers and you have senior officers. The paramilitary, in the sense, in terms of the discipline and the structure, in terms of the organizational format. So within the facility as it stands now, you have your built-in structures, who is the first point of contact, who supervises that person, who supervises the supervisor. And everybody at the institution, from the correctional officer 1 to the corporal, to the staff officer, to the overseer, to the superintendent, they all have a supervisory responsibility on a daily basis, 24 hours a day. Superimposed on top of that, we have an inspectorate that's within the department that has been fleshed out with additional staff. We have, on top of that, the Ministry of National Security has its inspectorate as well, which has an overarching purview to visit any of our institutions at any time and any day. We have our Board of Visitors who have access. The Board of Visitors appointed by the Minister reports directly to the Minister. They can visit again anytime, any day, any time of day. And there's a reporting mechanism for those checks and balances. The Commissioner does his random visits, his spot checks, any day of the week. On a weekly basis, persons can be turning up and observing. We have the Indicom partner who has access and can just do their spontaneous visit, and they have authority to enter and walk and view anywhere in the correctional facilities. We have the public defender's desk also who we have close relationships. We have a common understanding. They have access and they can turn up at any institution at any time and will not be denied access. So with all of those mechanisms in place, I'm not saying that it will be 100%, but we try to close those gaps. We try to be inquisitive and we try to be spontaneous. A lot of times you'll find, certainly at a certain higher position and higher responsibility, you follow your gut feeling, you go where you know where you have the usual matters that you need to go and investigate, and you do your spot check there more so than other places, and you try and be on top of what may go wrong before it goes wrong.
Are justices of the peace allowed to do spot checks?
Sorry, say again?
JPs, justices of the peace, are they allowed to do spot checks, or is that group one of the groups that would come in on a regular basis to do spot checks?
Right. So what you find is the superintendent A are usually justice of the peace. The department has assigned superintendents A to visit and take responsibility in terms of being, for want of a better word, adult partner to the juvenile institutions. So those superintendents visit from time to time. Members of the Board of Visitors are not only business persons in the community and persons in a professional capacity, but a lot of our Board of Visitors are justices of the peace as well. So they also have access to tour and view at their programs' timings. Thank you.
Would members of this committee be allowed to visit as well?
Visits are considered. Certainly visits are facilitated. Once the proper procedures are followed, the proper notifications are given, depending on certainly the COVID risk at the time, because we have to always be cognizant of that. But there are certain committees that will never be told no. It's just to arrange it and to make it happen whenever required.
Thank you.
Member Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the reports, and I've noticed that 2013, 2018, and 2020, looking at the offenses, there are 4 wards who would have been housed based on I would consider their offense to be serious murder in this instance. So I want to find out, is there a separate, or what kind of rehabilitation programs would those wards be placed in? Those who are being housed on the offense of murder. Are there any special rehabilitation program for them?
Again, you'll find that each offender would be assessed by a case officer based on that interview and that interaction. A rehabilitation program would be designed for that individual. Not knowing too much about the specific case, it could be a variation of time to be spent under our management. It could be different paths that can be taken. I think what's important here is that there is a professional social worker who would look at each individual case, design the best program that's required, whether it's psychosocial intervention, whether it's the psychiatrist to have constant interviews, whether it's a psychologist that's required to influence the path going forward, whether it's really a bad decision at the wrong time, and that structured program is designed, worked through with the different subject matter and the different professionals as required, and you look at how much time we have to try and impact that individual's decision making.
Follow up.
Yes.
I'm happy you mentioned time.
Follow.
If a juvenile comes in at 17 and we know that they leave at 18, are they automatically transferred to the adult correctional facility, or are they retried?
That is, I believe, that will be driven by the court directives as to how to treat with that child. But what is for certain is it doesn't matter how short a time the juvenile comes into us, that juvenile will be immersed in whatever programs we have going on, and based on the assessment of the case manager, the best program to fast track how we can rehabilitate for reintegration in that regard.
Thank you, Chair. Can you disabuse me of this fear? Aren't these people who are charged for murders who comes to your juvenile facility are just being held there until they reach an age that they go to big prison?
As I said, not to get into the specifics of each case.
But certainly, Commissioner, you don't have to get into the specifics of it. It's murder, right? And the truth is that if they are below a certain age, they would not be sent to the adult facilities. So technically, can you answer to say whether they are just being held there in the state because they are below a particular age, even though they are going to be given all the other psychosocial and facilities that exist at the Juvenile Correctional Center? But to answer my question, isn't it that they are held there until they reach that age, then go big prison?
Sir, member, I'm glad you clarified what you meant by in addition to being held. We don't just hold the wards of the state, regardless of what your sentence or your offense has been. They're all treated and given an opportunity on a level playing field with regards to their classes, their academics, their ability to read and write if they were weak in those areas before. It may be understood what the destiny holds, but while we hold them in our juvenile facilities, they are treated as children.
The question though, both members is trying to get across or to get some clarity on is, and I'm going to ask it directly to you this way. A child comes in to the facility, any one of your facility, for murder. On the point of turning 18 years old, when they can no longer be in your institution, what takes place from there?
Based on the court order, that will decide the next step. Based on the court order that we have.
Also, the court would have given the instruction as to how to treat it.
Yes.
So does the court seek to find out from your facility, or no, I should say, do they rely on a report from your facility in terms of the psychological state of the child, in terms of their behavior generally? Are those taken into account?
If it's requested, we try and corral that data that may have been captured while the child has been with us, and we share it once requested. I'm not sure.
Chairman.
Based on request.
Commissioner, I'm going to make your answer a little simpler for us to understand. Are there any instances of any child who has been charged for murder who reached the age of 18 and has not left your facility to an adult prison?
We pride ourselves in not holding any offender that has reached the age of 18 within our child facilities. That's against the law. So whatever the court order directs, we treat with the individual at the age of 18, then we do that. Thank you.
No, I think you're being circuitous, Commissioner. And I think this committee demands a little clarity. I'm asking the question, have you had any experience of any child. And remember, you're not just for juvenile correctional facility, you're the commissioner, director of commissioner of the correctional facilities. So the big prison, as I would want to term it, fall under your jurisdiction as well. Are you aware of any juvenile who has reached the age of 18, who has been charged for murder, who has been a ward of one of your juvenile correctional facilities, not going to an adult facility after reaching the age of 18?
I am not aware of that, member.
Commissioner.
I am happy to hear that the organization is so flexible that you can individualize your treatment, and that is good, because you cannot have a one-size-fits-all in this situation where people are coming from different backgrounds and different areas. So I'm happy that you're able to receive a child and give specific treatment based on whatever issues that they are having, and I'm very pleased to hear that.
Commissioner, and on a daily basis, you have your activities that you go over and over 7 days a week, 24/7. Are there any challenges that you face that is recurrent? Are there any challenges, any at all?
And we speak specifically to the juvenile facilities. Because as member mentioned, the adult facilities, that's a different case and point. There are always challenges, and you know, there are always areas that certainly we would ideally like to see improved. As it speaks to our juvenile facilities, one that pops up right now, it's our teachers, and the availability, even if we have vacancies, and even if we and we invite applications to fill some of our vacancies, oftentimes we have a matter where persons don't take up the offer to join, to come and teach in those spaces. So in terms of getting the qualified person to come on board and to be part of the team, that has proven to be a slow uptake and challenging. So those few teachers who are with us, whether it's CXC, whether it's a trade area, whatever area the teachers are required, the few who are with us oftentimes are pressured to provide all of the services required, where additional staff would certainly lighten the load.
You see, one of the things that persons or different groups will do when they come to meet with us, to sit with us, to discuss things, it is not always that, because I look at the report and I see a glowing piece of document in front of us. We just don't want to hear the niceties and the pretty things. We want to know exactly where your challenges are, where you need support, so that we can lobby Parliament, government, to say this is where we are falling short within our correctional service, especially in the juvenile sector, wherever. And so we want to know not just a glowing paper, but also that hard part of it that you just can't put a finger on, where you need outside support or you need higher support.
Chairman, if I may follow up on you, sorry. And you're preempted me because I was going to tell the Commissioner, and I'm glad that we are on the same wavelength in terms of that, because this is the Human Resource and Social Development Committee, and the challenges that exist in the respective entities ought to be brought to the attention of the Parliament, right? Because at the end of the day, this committee makes a report to the Parliament, and there are recommendations that are embodied in that report that should go to the Cabinet. And then the Cabinet, based on the recommendations here, coming out of these committees, make the appropriate adjustments and subventions, because I know that is part of what is not being said. So you know, it is important that you know, the picture is painted so that we can have a fair understanding, as the chairman is requesting, how your entity are run, you know. I mean, you mentioned the challenges of the teachers, yes, but there might be other challenges that we need to know about that you probably might be a little constrained to tell us, but then it is a parliamentary committee and you should just bear it. B-A-R-E, that is.
Thank you, member. And Sir Chair, now, I stand corrected. You know, I looked at the parameters under which the questions were thrown at us. It may have been presented in a way that maybe these were areas that have things that need to be sorted out. The way we answered, we didn't answer in the sense that we would think we had an opportunity to bear all in terms of the challenges within the juvenile facility. But we can prepare that, Sir Chair. We can prepare that, and we can send it up through our permanent secretary, and we can have that on your desk. Because we would really love to have something of that sort, because yes, as the member rightly said, we as a parliamentary committee needs also in our task to make recommendation to Parliament so that it can be vented in other areas that has the authority to dispose of the situation. And so, yes, we would appreciate you sending through your permanent secretary the challenges that you face and the support that, in your opinion, you think could be had, and so we will then take it from there.
Yeah, right. I was just going to make the same suggestion.
Will do, Sir Chair. That can be prepared. If I may, any specific timeline you'd like that?
We will not tell you that there is a specific, but it would be in your best interest. If it is support that you need, if it is challenges that you face and want to get rid of your challenge, it would be in your best interest to make it as quickly as possible, because then when we take it from here, it takes some amount of time to go through the different channels to get back to you in the light that you would want to see it.
We'll have that prepared, Sir Chair. Yes.
Are there any other questions for those persons who are with us virtually? Are there any other questions?
No, Chair, not at this time.
Thank you very much. And at this time, if there's no other question for the Department of Correctional Services, Ms. Lieutenant Colonel Retired Giro and his team, we will now say thank you for visiting with us and presenting to us this document, and you will do the necessary with the section that is omitted. And so we thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, sir.
At this point, you can be excused. At this time, members, are there any other business to be discussed?
Chair, I noticed in one of the correspondence sent out by the clerk to the committee that the university indicated that they were unwilling to be with us at a particular time, but they would avail themselves of another date if given.
So we would have, at our last meeting, would have requested the clerk to have written to the University of the West Indies seeking audience with us to make a presentation on the registrar or the registration and report. And so they would have, in time, responded to us to say that the person who has the task is on leave, and so they are requesting of us to give them a second date in which they would make themselves available. And at this point, the person would be returning to work early December, but at that time we would be going off. And so we want to look at January, and the first opening date that we are seeing is January the 12th, Wednesday morning, January the 12th. If that is okay with members, then we will so instruct Madam Clerk to respond in like manner. Sorry? The 12th of January. That's okay with us? Okay then. Also, there is a correspondent from the Ministry of Justice. We had asked them in question 4 the number of cases currently before the court that involves children and the general nature of the offenses. They have responded to us that the ministry is seeking an extension of 2 weeks to provide this information, which has been requested from the court. And so we'll also move that we give them the extension. So say all of us. Madam Clerk, you're instructed to respond to them in like manner. Any other?
The Chair, I'm sorry, but I may have joined a little late because of the technical difficulties, but I'm not sure if we went through the minutes of the last meeting.
Yes, we did ask for correction and confirmation moved by...
And got corrections?
Sorry?
And received corrections?
There was no correction at the time, and so the minute was confirmed by Member Crawford, seconded by Member Vaz.
Okay, what can I, at a later date, submit my corrections to the minutes?
Yes, you could do so.
All right, I'll do that.
You can do so now. On the advice of the clerk, you can do so now.
It will be a little tedious. What I'll do, I'll document it, and then maybe at the next meeting, I can just present it.
I didn't hear that.
I'm saying what I'll do is just document it today, and at the next meeting, we could possibly present it. I could just present it to the committee.
Appreciated. So, members, there is no other business. The next date that we have slated for HR meeting is on the 12th of January, 12th of January, 2022. This meeting stands adjourned.
Jamaica, home of the